At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, this is really a great topic. It's for me, it just really struck me hard when I saw that this is what you talk about, because I've been considering this particular topic in relationship to helping people to understand how to really become their better selves. And we'll get into that. But what I'd love for you to do is to kind of share with the audience your journey. Who are you? What is your past? And how did you come to this point in time where you're talking about bravery?
Yeah, sure. I started my life journey in the Midwest in Minnesota. And then my first career was blowing things up in the Marine Corps. I was a United States Marine. I was a combat engineer officer. And then I moved from being someone who was responsible for Marines that would blow things up to then I started selling drugs, the legal kind, right? Pharmaceutical industry. I went into corporate America, fell in love with science and the industry of helping people. So I went into that industry. So I worked in corporate America for 13 years. And then I realized how much I valued so much of the personal development and the leadership development. I realized that just because I was a United States Marine Corps officer doesn't mean I was a great leader yet. And I learned so much about how to look at myself and become a better person, how to be a better leader. And so I ended up moving into that space, doing leadership development inside of a Fortune 100 company. And then that was my jumping off point, and I started my own company. It had such an impact on me as a leader, as a person. I really love just helping others become their best self. So I've had my company for now 10 years. And a few years ago, just because I love learning and growing, I decided to go back to school and study. And I decided to study the science of happiness and well-being, or positive psychology, which I feel like a lot of people are talking about, the science of happiness. And what I ended up researching and really honing in on as I did my research for my capstone project was really what we're talking about today, which is how do you help people really become their best selves, accomplish the meaningful things they want in life, and what really holds them back. And that led me to realizing that sometimes fear, like people really want to do things, they want to accomplish things, but they don't do it. And what's the reason? They let fear hold them back. So I was become obsessed and said, how do I help people overcome that fear? Because if you don't overcome that fear and you stay in this comfort zone, right? Then you live a life of regret, and then you don't see how great like life can be. So that's what landed me where I am today. Now I write, I speak, I research the science of bravery.
Oh, I love that. And it's so true. I'm glad you brought up fear, because I was hoping you would talk about that, because what I have found is that fear, as you say, it stops so many people in so many ways. I've interviewed a lot of people who talk about how they're continually getting into these bad relationships and they don't get out of them. And they keep getting attracted to the same type and so forth. And as I've looked at that, and as we've talked about that, I think one of the key elements is the fear of change, the fear of something, the fear of the unknown versus being able to accept and being comfortable with the known, creates such a dichotomy, because then they're not able to get out, as you say, and actually do what they want to do. And I'm loving the picture that's just behind you. Is that Buddha?
There is Buddha. And then if you look around my office, I have everything's very intentional. There, let me see, wait, down. Oh, I'm trying to get my fingers right here, but right up there, that is Epictetus, right? Stoic philosopher. That's Marcus Aurelius right there. So yeah, I have a lot of a lot of different inspiring figures that really influence my work and create the environment to call forth my best work. So yeah, that is a
And
good one.
isn't it interesting, those philosophies? And I found as I've studied many of them that I really look at what are the similarities, and there's so many similarities between that. And the whole goal is to help people not to suffer. And that's one of Buddha's main
Ah,
focuses is not to suffer. And yet here we're talking about how people are experiencing that suffering in their lives because of fear, because of the inability to move forward. So let's talk about that a bit. When you talk about the science of bravery,
mhm.
what would you say that is?
Well, it's looking at what are the things that we know with the scientific evidence to back it up on how we can build bravery so that people can step forward in the presence of fear. Because look at what is bravery? I get that question all the time. What is bravery? And what is it not? So bravery is defined as not eliminating fear. It's not becoming fearless. It's not it's not waiting until you're perfectly ready and confident. So bravery is taking steps forward in the presence of fear. So that's the first thing that people need to understand. I think that's why people don't take steps forward. They keep waiting until they're not scared anymore. Well, it's not going to happen. If you're going to wait until you're ready, if you're going to wait until there's no fear, then you're probably never going to take a step forward. And that's why they get stuck, right? So that's what bravery is. And then you add the science of bravery, you know, let's look at the scientific rigor behind what are things that people can do to build bravery. And what I'm excited to share with the world is there's things that anyone can do to build their bravery. And I use an analogy of it's like a muscle. If you want to build a bicep and you don't have very strong muscles, you're going to go to the gym and you're going to keep working out that muscle until it gets stronger. Well, what we know about bravery, there's things that you can do. Think of exercises for your bravery muscle, for your brain, that can help you build that capacity for bravery so you can take those courageous actions. So I call it the science of bravery because I think there's a lot of people that are just kind of motivational and be like, just go out there and be brave and rah, 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 which I appreciate their passion and they're trying to help people. But I feel like I have a responsibility because like I'm a nerd. Like I'm not going to just tell you what I think you should do to be brave. I got to tell you the things that I know with scientific certainty that if you do these things, it will lead to you being braver and then stepping forward toward what you want. And that's going to lead to your greatest life. Right.
Well,
So,
yeah, and the question that I have had oftentimes is, in fact, I was talking to someone that I interviewed just last week,
mhm,
and I asked, she's doing a lot of astrology and that kind of stuff, and I said, "So, are you
mhm.
doing life coaching?" And her comment was, "I was, but I quit because people never were able to get aware of what the issues were." And so, as you talk about bravery, and you're
Mhm,
talking about, as you were in the Marines and you were with, obviously observing fighting going on and that type of thing,
mhm.
and also now in the corporate world where what you're doing, how many times do you find that they're not even aware of the issues that they need to be brave about?
Yeah. I mean, first is awareness. Yeah. I think that I think what people are unaware of, I think people mistakenly think that the path to happiness and well-being is staying comfortable. As you used the word suffering earlier, right? I don't
Right.
want to suffer, so I should just stay comfortable and I shouldn't take any risks because isn't that what will bring me happiness? But I need to tell everyone the truth, right? And the truth is choosing the easy path, choosing staying comfortable all the time is the sure path to suffering, right? So that awareness comes about when you help people understand that when you step into challenges, when you step toward things that you're scared of, those are the things that are going to bring you the greatest levels of happiness and well-being and fulfillment. But it seems kind of counterintuitive. And And Doug, especially right now, I think that our world has gotten a little too soft. We're getting a little too soft, trying to take away all let's take away stress, let's take away discomfort. If there's any adversity, let's take it away. It's not realistic. I mean, I think the younger generation, I can say this because I've got two teenage daughters. I think there's just a culture of just let me have more me days and I want my me day. I want things to be easy. If you have a me day, a self-care day, 6 out of 7 days, you're just being lazy and you just don't want to get uncomfortable. If you have a self-care, a me day once a week, then it's a good rest to be able to get back to doing the hard thing. So I think in general, the pendulum has swung too far. And yes, I believe that sometimes people can encounter too much stress and adversity, and they do need to get a little bit of a rest. But just in general, our world is getting too soft. And I guess I'm on a mission to help people understand that they are stronger than they think. And if they try to step into things that are hard and uncomfortable, that will actually lead to a more comfortable, better life.
Well, and you talk about the culture of softness, and I totally agree with you on that. But also, what I observe is a culture of anger. And it's fascinating. I've got a good friend that all of a sudden I'm starting to see a bunch of posts that are just there's a sense of anger in each of those posts, and particularly with all the changes that have taken place politically and so forth. All of a sudden, here's all these posts going on about anger, and it was interesting because I looked at that and I thought, you know what, we tend to allow ourselves to be angry. And my experience is if you look at that anger, if you really try to analyze that goes back deeper than just what's happening today. It goes back into that childhood. It goes back into whatever experiences, so that when a trigger occurs, that anger arises. And I think so many people are not willing to really look at that. So how do you help people as you're working with people, particularly the leadership that you do, the leadership training? How do you help a leader that's struggling to really be willing? It's the bravery to be looking at introspectively, what's really going on in my life? What's causing this type of behavior and this type of emotion, which then reflects in my behavior?
Well, I think when people look in the mirror and have to be honest and a little bit vulnerable, that's the ultimate form of bravery, right? It's very easy to point the fingers of blame on why things are not going well, but we've got to take some ownership there. Talk about people being angry. I spend a lot of time teaching leaders about emotional intelligence, right? Just teaching them that I understand that things happen and you have these emotional responses, but these things are going to continue happening. The world is there's always going to be stress. There's going to be adversity, things that are happening, but you have the choice on how you let that impact you, right? So emotional intelligence, things happen. We've got the triggers, but how you respond to those triggers ultimately impacts your life, the life of the people that you lead. So are you just going to become a victim and allow events happening in the world just dictate your mood and control you? Or are you going to decide that you're going to decide how to respond in the best way to best serve you, the team that you lead, and your family? So like I say, look in the mirror, right? What is the impact of you getting angry and then letting that angry eat you up? Is that really what you want? So I think a lot of the work that I do is I want people to really look in the mirror and go, what is it that you really want in life? What is the impact that you want to have in life? And what's holding you back from being able to accomplish it? And usually fear is that root cause.
Well, and you're working with the corporate America, but what I have found, and I say what I have found is that each one of us in our lives needs to be that individual leader. And so what you talk about, in my opinion, is so important just for individuals to understand that,
Mhm.
you know what, their lives are dictated by their own personal leadership. And so
Yeah.
everything that you're talking about is so true and applies to that. Now, I know you talk about three pillars of bravery, and I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit more, and we'll get into that discussion.
Yeah. Well, as I just want to add on to what you're saying, which is a great link into the three pillars, which sometimes the hardest person to lead is to lead yourself. So the three pillars that I talk about, I commonly reference as self-leadership, right? So we've got to be great self-leaders, right? First, before we can lead others. So, these three pillars that I'll be going over with you, this is really for an individual to be able to apply the way I'm going to explain it. But then the job of the leaders is how do you develop your team employees that are self leaders? If you can have a team of self leaders that have these three pillars and they're doing it consistently, then you're going to be the best leader ever. But let's start like thinking of the individual. So, in order for someone to build this capacity for bravery, there's really three different dimensions of things that, exercises that we can do to build the skill, and they're all interconnected. So if you start moving on one, it ends up impacting another dimension. So they're all like interconnected. So there's brave mindset, there's brave actions, and there's brave relationships. And when you leverage all three together, it absolutely creates this upward spiral and helps you achieve those things that you've always wanted that you're fearful of. So brave mindset is really believing that you can achieve hard things. It's believing that with hard work and effort, you'll be able to develop that new skill, that you'll be able to accomplish that goal. So a lot of the research that's under my brave mindset comes from Carol Dweck, who's known for her growth mindset using the power of yet. Like if I say, I have this goal that I want to run a 5K, a race. And I say to myself, right, I'm not a runner. What am I kidding me? I could never do that. I'm not a runner. You just think of like, add that power of yet. I'm not a runner yet. Or I could not run a 5K yet. So if you use that word yet, what it does, it unlocks our perception of thinking like our skills and abilities are not fixed. With hard work and effort, I can get there. So brave mindset is, and there's four different things that I teach there, and I don't need to go into all of them, but it's all these different really cognitive skills of believing that it's possible. Imagine if someone doesn't believe it's ever possible to do something really hard. Well, if you don't believe it's possible, then you're not going to take action. So we got to start working on the mindset first.
Well,
Optimism.
and actually, I want you to talk about those four elements. You don't have to go
Okay.
into it in depth, but
Okay.
please,
I'll just kind of
because
list them.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So one is what I talked about in terms of growth mindset. So believing that it's possible using the power of yet. The second thing is the stress is enhancing mindset coming from Aaliyah Crum, Kelly McGonigal, where they have done a lot of research on your mindset on stress or challenges is predictive of your response to stress. So it's really changing people's mindset. Instead of thinking like, oh, stress and adversity or challenges are horrible, it's shifting it to challenges are opportunities for me to grow skills and get stronger. When I experience stress, this is my body responding in a way to help me perform at my best, right? I can feel my heart pumping. I can feel breathing. This is my body preparing me to do my best. So that stress is enhancing mindset. Third is really all around positive emotions. Barbara Fredrickson's work, also Marty Seligman, father of positive psychology, on his learned optimism. It's teaching people that you do not have to be victims of your emotions. Back to emotional intelligence. Instead, we can acknowledge the emotions that we feel, right? But then we can actually generate the emotions that are going to best serve us, the teams that we lead, or the people in our lives. So it's all the research there on generating positive emotions. And then finally, the fourth thing in brave mindset is for us to really take control of our self-talk. Many of us have this little internal voice. Actually, we all do. We all have this internal chatter of things that we tell ourselves. And many times that internal chatter is this voice that says, you can't do it. You suck. You're a loser. You're never going to be able to do this. So sometimes we have this little voice in our head that is saying always negative, like pessimistic things. And this goes back to teaching people that you have the power to be able to refute those things and change that constant dialogue in your head, because those words you keep hearing do have an impact on your performance. So there's ways that we can try to change that internal dialogue to better serve us. So those are the 4 practical strategies that I teach in Brave Minds.
Well, and I love that last one because, we talk so much about mindset. And one thing we don't talk about as much, some do, is the fact that here's these neural pathways that have been developed. It's habitual. So as you talk about, I'm not good enough, all of these imprints that we developed as young children or whenever, it's habitual because it's been impregnated into our mind along those neural pathways. And so the ability, as you were talking about, to be able to change those, and science tells us now that you can literally take a neural pathway, move it to the side, and create a new one, which is much more positive.
Yeah. And this goes back to my analogy of building a muscle. Like the first time you go into the gym and try to lift some really heavy dumbbells, like it's going to be hard and you're going to be sore. So as you start working on building your bravery and start doing some of these exercises, or in the academic word, they call them interventions, but it's just exercise, like kind of brain exercises and practice. It's going to be hard in the beginning because you don't really have that part of your brain isn't as strong. You don't have as many neural pathways, but you do the work. And then just like your muscle goes, oh God, that was a hard workout, I better make that muscle stronger. Our brain does the same thing. So our neuroplasticity, like it'll start building, and then this is the thing, is it gets easier over time, right? We get cortical thickening. So like our brains are like, in a way, I mean, they're not muscles, but I love the analogy because, parts of our brain can literally get thicker when we work them out. And then as you talked about neural pathways, we're going to start creating many more new neural pathways to light up that part of our brain. So we've got more superhighways going to that part of our brain and that part of our brain. And so it actually gets easier over time. And that's when I say you're developing this capacity for bravery. It's hard in the beginning, but once you start getting some momentum, it gets easier over time.
So are you using affirmations? Do you help people use affirmations? Do you use meditation? I know one thing that I do is, as I'm meditating, I like the concept of very specific meditative quote affirmations that I will say out loud as I'm doing my walking meditation, to literally, be able to start to change those areas that I find I struggle with. And if I'm doing that constantly, that starts to change that neural pathway. What's your approach on that? How do you help people to kind of do that?
I think there's a lot of different ways we can try to help people change that internal dialogue. One of the ones that I learned when I was at UPenn earning my master's in positive psychology, I was sitting in a class and one of my professors was Dr. Karen Rivik. And she told me a way to change our internal dialogue. And for me, it absolutely worked. And I found it's been really, really practical for my audiences. Especially, I got to admit something to you. Sometimes if things feel a little too soft and a little too woo-woo, I kind of like roll my eyes. Or in my audience, when I'm going to corporate America and I've got all of these business people, like sometimes what I teach them, I've got to make sure just it makes sense to them where they're going to do it. Where if I start talking about, we're going to start meditating and we're going to start with affirmations, like I might lose them right there. Right?
Oh, so exactly. Yeah.
So when I was doing my research too, I'm like, what are some of these things I can teach people to do that almost everyone would be willing to do? And I have this test, like if my husband would do it, then anyone will do it because he's the one that will roll his eyes. So it's like, will it pass like my husband test? So what she recommended is, she says, when you're listening to that inner dialogue, she goes, I just want you to listen to it. And when you realize, like, is that really helping me? And if the voice in your head is not helping you, you got to recognize it and say, like, let's change this. Let's change it. So first of all, is awareness of like, listen to that internal voice. And if it's not helping you, let's decide to do something about it. So I love that in terms of awareness. And then her strategy that she taught in classes, she goes, I want you to imagine that that exact same thing that you're telling yourself in your head, you just heard someone you care about say out loud about themselves. Maybe it's your child. Maybe it's your best friend. It's someone that you care about deeply. And you've just heard him say those horrible things that you said in your own, like, I can't do it. I'm not good enough, whatever those things are. And then she says, what would you say to that loved one? What's the truthful thing that you would say to that? And she calls it, what is the truth that you want to try to tell them? And if it was one of my teenage daughters, I would say, that is absolutely not true. You do have the ability. It's going to take some time and effort, but you are great. You are capable. You can do it. So those affirmations, I sneak them in there. But I do it with Karen Ryvik's, her strategy here is if you just think about how do you overcome it, recognize when you're saying something to yourself that isn't helping you, and then imagine what you would say to somebody else that you care about. How would you help them change their thinking? And you apply that to yourself. Be that person that helps with your own internal dialogue. So when you kind of do this, when you detach yourself from the thoughts and say, what would an outside person that cares about me say to me? It helps people come up with that really easily. And they think it makes sense and it's not too woo-woo, where most people will actually do that. So that's one of the primary strategies I use.
Oh, and I love
I guess
that.
sneak it in there.
Well, and it reminds me, as I went back to business school and got really into human behavior, one of the things that they talked about is step outside of yourself. And,
Exactly.
So when you're talking about awareness, step outside of yourself and observe what's going on. But then I love what you say there. Also step outside of yourself and start to talk to yourself. And I love that approach. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. And it's just simple. It's a simple way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So there's the brave mindset. Now let's talk about the brave action.
All right. Well, the reason why it's so important to go to these other two dimensions of bravery is there are, I think, a lot of people out there that they're dreamers. They set goals. They believe they can do anything, but then they don't take a step forward. So brave action is, the brave mindset opens up the door for possibility, but brave action is stepping through that door. So brave action what are some of the evidence-based practices that help people take that step through the door? So one of them that I teach my clients, so we can go back to my strategies. One is setting a tangible goal. So once you set that tangible goal of what is it that you want to accomplish, you've got to make sure that it's both meaningful, right? So it matters. It really matters to you intrinsically. It's got to be something that's important to you. And it also has to be challenging. It's got to get you out of your comfort zone. And then it's also got to be specific due to Locke and Latham's research on, goal setting theory. So if you believe that you can do hard things and you kind of have a wish, then we got to get to the work of saying, let's set that tangible goal. And let's make sure that's written down, right? And then the next step after you develop that goal is, I use the analogy of a ladder, and I think it's been used. I don't know who to give credit to for the ladder analogy. I certainly didn't come up with it. But if you think of your goal as the top rung to this ladder, right? And then of course your ladder is leaning against the thing that's very meaningful to you. So think of that analogy. Now you need to come up with what are the rungs to the ladder that will lead you to the top. So breaking down, how to accomplish the goal in those achievable steps makes you feel more comfortable to take that step. So it's developing those implementation intentions in the literature. So, but you still can't stop there. So one of the keys to being able to achieve your goal, and this is coming from someone who's an expert in positive psychology, is thinking about what will get in your way and what will go wrong. This is Dr. Gabrielle Utengen's research, where she talks about if you really want to achieve something that's important to you, you need to anticipate the adversity, the challenges, both externally and many times internally, and then develop contingency plans on what you're going to do if that happens. Imagine I set a goal. I want to go to the gym each day. Those are my little steps. It's really thinking about what might get in my way of getting to the gym. External challenges would be like, if there's a blizzard, there's no way I can get to the gym, or maybe my car battery doesn't work. But most of the times it's not those external things. You know what it usually is? It's us. And, and so she really has you go through and identify the things that may get in your way from taking action. And then she has you do contingency planning. So I love her work, which is absolutely brilliant. So you actually want to think about what may get in your way and develop a contingency plan. So that way, when it happens, you just go right into action. You've got your contingency plan. Or when something goes wrong, instead of like, oh, the sky is falling, like, oh, you know what? This isn't working and I'm just going to quit. You're ready. You're psychologically like ready when there's a challenge. Because if you're setting a challenging goal, there are going to be bumps in the road. So when a bump in the road happens, you're not going to just go in the corner and cry and say it didn't work. You're going to be able to overcome it.
Well, I love that. And when I was working with small businesses, I never got into the corporate area, but I love your ladder analogy. And because what I would do, and using that analogy, I'd say, okay, what's your goal? What's your dream? Now, here's the top rung. This is what you're achieving. But let's go to the rung right before that. What would have to happen here for you to achieve that?
Yeah.
And then, okay, and if you've done that, what do you need to do here on this rung in order to achieve that? And then you start working backwards. And all of a sudden, that's where the awareness of, oh my goodness, I've got to start right here.
We got to start right here. And then, but they at least see they see the steps, and that first step is something they think they can do. And then the last part of Brave Action gets to ruthless planning, prioritization, and focus. We are naturally wired many times to procrastinate. Are you a procrastinator? I'm a procrastinator if I don't.
Yeah.
So if we've got a big project or a goal and we know that we've got to get things done, we wake up in the morning and usually the first thing that we do is not the hard thing. We will do the easy thing, and then we wait until the end of the day to do the hard thing. And many times at the end of the day, we just push it to tomorrow. So this is developing the discipline to decide, what do I need to do each day, or at a minimum each week. You can look at sometimes if you have a big goal, maybe you'll work on a big goal like 2 days a week, but you've got to do the ruthless planning, prioritization, and you have to attack those hard tasks first thing in the morning. So you got to run at the really hard things. And when you do that first thing in the morning, you get a dopamine hit. You feel so accomplished and you become more productive throughout the day. So instead of putting off the hard thing, it's teaching people that you wake up first thing in the morning and you go right after the hardest thing, the thing that you maybe even be dreading, the thing that you're dreading doing or the most uncomfortable. If you start with that, it's amazing how you can start training your brain to, again, attack the hard things, get them going first thing in the morning, and then you're so much more productive and you start getting this momentum. You ever heard of Brian Tracy in the business world? Remember that name?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he wrote the book called Eat That Frog, right? And his whole book was, he said, Mark Twain had this phrase, like, if you eat a frog first thing in the morning, there's nothing harder that you're going to do, and your day is going to go great. So he's the one who I think sold 38 million copies of that book. But the whole concept was ruthless planning, prioritization, and focus. If you really care about the goal, you need to get after it first thing each day. And it's really hard in the beginning, but you develop that habit of doing that. And then you crave that dopamine hit. You want to get that hardest thing done.
Well, and you talked about originally the culture of easy. How many times do you see people trying to jump those rungs? In other words, go from rung number 2 to rung number 5 and not worry about 3, 4. And what happens when they do that?
Well, sometimes good things can happen and maybe they have to skip a step, but so many things, and maybe I'm going to get a little too deeper philosophical here, is, getting up to the top of the ladder, that is a great goal. And you do want to achieve the goal, but really the thing that we're really striving for is not just achieving the goal at the top and getting to the top. It's who we're becoming on the journey.
Yes.
The transformation that we're experiencing, right? Because guess what happens when you get to the top ring? When you achieve, if you're always waiting to be happy when you get to the goal accomplishment, then it's not going to last very long, right? Like, we'll be happy for a day or two, but then it's like, what is the next thing? So it's learning how to love the journey of taking brave action. And when you develop these habits, it's something that serves you, and it's like you're growing and you're developing along the way. So it's really what I love about the science of bravery is when people start putting this into practice and you ask them like what impact has it had? They don't really talk about achieving the goal. They're like, it's the person that I've become. And
Well,
that's,
yeah.
I don't know.
I love that. In fact, I talk about that a lot because it's like, you look at your behavior and it's merely a reflection of who you are. And so when people are trying to change outcomes in their lives, it's not a matter of doing this, doing this, doing this. It's becoming. And as you say, going up the steps of the ladder, it's a transformation that's
It
taking place
is.
within yourself. And I love that you talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really helping people move from like, I'm a victim of life and life it just happens to me, and teaching them that you can be the hero, right? I mean, it's really taking people almost through a hero's journey. Like you can take the wheel and steer your life. And when you do, it's hard and there's going to be some bumps along the road, but it is absolutely exhilarating when you realize you have that power. You have you are so much more powerful than you even can imagine. And when you just start kind of unlocking a little bit of bravery, like it's kind of like this flywheel, you learn about this brave mindset, and then you start learning about how to take brave action. And then we'll get to brave relationships. And when you do, it really becomes this upward spiral. And it's exhilarating. And people don't have to be stuck in this rut.
Oh
They
yeah. And
just
let's
choose.
talk about the third pillar, the brave
Mm,
relationships.
yeah. So brave relationships is about um, trying to curate the right brave tribe. I call it the brave tribe that will support your journey. So I say curate very, very intentionally. Like if you want to accomplish this goal or grow in this way, who are the people that you want to surround yourself with that are going to support your journey, that can help you when you slip a step, that are going to be there to support you to make sure that you get up that ladder, right? And the reason why it's so important to curate those people is sometimes they're not the people that we're around right now. So let's say you want to, and we can use a simple example, right? Let's say I want to climb a mountain. What's the mountain that I want to climb? Um, I might have people around me that I hang out with regularly, and they're like, "Why on earth would you want to climb a mountain? That is the stupidest thing ever. That sounds dangerous. You shouldn't do that." So sometimes the people that you're around, what they're going to tell you is to probably stay small. And it's because they care about you and they don't want you to take risks. So curating a brave tribe would be finding who are other people that have climbed this mountain, and let me go and meet them and let me ask them for advice. So being brave is sometimes being vulnerable and saying, "Hey, I don't know how to do this," even at work, right? "Hey, I've never led a project like this before. You led a couple projects very similar to this sometime. Can you share some of your wisdom advice? Can you show me how to do it?" Right? So surrounding yourself with the people that have the wisdom or the knowledge that can support you on that journey. And if you're going up that ladder, there's times that you're going to slip, that you're going to be uncomfortable. You may be ready to quit. You need to have the people that you can call that are going to help you keep going, that are going to call forth your best. Right. So the reason why I use the word brave around that is, first of all, you got to get outside of your little bubble and maybe go and seek out other people and approach them and ask them for their help. That takes bravery, right? Um, and then whenever you when you do stumble and fall, many people think, oh, to be brave, you just figure it out on your own. Like, I don't need any help. I'm fine, right? Actually, the braver thing to do is to admit you don't know, admit mistakes, and ask for help. So that takes vulnerability, the ultimate bravery. So within brave
Yeah.
relationships, it's curating the brave tribe, going outside and developing new relationships with people that will support the journey, in addition to, like, the relationships that you have. And then it's asking for help and support. Also asking for suggestions for improvement. So even if things are going well, like, who's the person you could trust? I could say, "Dr. Doug, like, you are an expert in this and things are going pretty well, but do you have any suggestions on things I can be doing differently or better so I can get to the top of the ladder?" So it's seeking feedback. And then the last element of brave relationships is you've got to be looking for people to help you, but also who can you extend a hand down and help up? Because, when you actually help others, not only are you helping them, but you actually get a bigger dopamine hit and you get more pleasure, you get a bigger boost to your well-being when you help others than even getting help. So I make sure that I teach that because we always have to pay it forward. And many times when I have a huge audience, when I'm speaking in front of audiences, across the country, even across the globe, one common thing I'll ask is I'll say, how many of you like admitting you might be stuck in asking for help? Raise your hand high if you like doing that. Now, very few hands go up because people don't feel comfortable doing that. And then I ask the next question, how many of you help or enjoy helping others that may be a little bit stuck to help them achieve their goals? How many of you like mentoring others? Oh, everyone loves helping others. And I say, why is that? And so I'm like, do you guys see the difference here? So you're hesitating to ask for help because you don't think they want to help you. And it's going to make you, but you like helping others. So sometimes that's a good reminder to make people feel more comfortable actually.
Well, and vulnerability, it's interesting. And I think fear plays such a role in that, is that, we're afraid to be vulnerable. But as you say, it's only when we're vulnerable that we're able to really grow and get that help. And the other thing is, it's so interesting to look at who you have surrounded yourself with and really look at their lives and what they're accomplishing and realizing that, hey, you know what, if that's not where I want to be, as you say, I need to curate a new group of friends, a new group of associates, a new group of relationships.
Yeah, you are who you hang out with, or
Yeah.
really thinking, who do you surround yourself with? Like I'm thinking of my Stoic, philosophers that have influenced me in this. And by the way, anything I'm teaching, or even anything that we have studied in more recent, science, it's all ancient. It's all ancient wisdom. We're not doing anything new. We're just talking about it in a different way. And ancient wisdom is now proven with modern science, but it's all the same stuff. But
Yeah.
so William James, the gentleman that really started psychology, he says like you are what you attend to, right? So you are what you attend to, what you think about, what you do. So like make sure you think about that. Or,
Yeah.
Epictetus, my favorite Stoic, says, surround yourself with people that will call forth your best, that will challenge you to be your very best. That's pretty powerful,
Oh,
right?
yeah, it is. So, any quick stories about how you've really helped someone embrace this bravery in their lives and transform them?
Um, yeah, I can think of just someone that is a colleague in positive psychology, and they studied positive psychology because they really wanted to understand it and had dreams of being able to apply it to help others' lives. But they were in a job, and in the job was security, right? And by taking them through this, and even though they're a fellow person that studied positive psychology, to really help them go through the steps, it gave them the confidence to start stepping toward what they really want to do. And I find that a lot in careers, like I'm in a job and I really don't like it, but I just get paid and I'm just kind of in this rut. So in the case that I'm talking about, this person started taking steps and then ended up making a transition, and now this person is doing the work that they feel called to do, and they're just like, if I wouldn't have taken this risk, and moved in that direction, I don't know where I would be. So that's kind of the one thing I want to make sure that your audience keeps in mind is, what is it that you really want? What's the impact that you want to make in the world? And what are you doing now? And is there a gap between where you are now and what you really want to do, and what is holding you back? And if fear is one of those things, I just have good news for anyone. Anyone can be brave. It's not a trait that you're born with. It's not a trait that you're born with. Anyone can build the capacity to be brave, to take those courageous acts, and it's doing the work, day in and day out. So that's the good news.
And there's your message. You
There
didn't
is
have
my
to ask
message.
you for it. So, as we close, how do people find you, and what is your desire in accomplishing and helping people that may get in contact with you?
Well, the easiest way is people can just go to my website, which is jillschulman.com. So first name is pretty easy to spell, Jill. Last name is schulman.com. And if you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can also take a Bravery self-assessment. It's going to really measure how strong is your bravery in this 3 dimensions, and then it will give you some practical tips and what you can do with it. So I give that away for free so that everyone can kind of get that idea of where they are and build it. And then I'm all over social media. So I've got YouTube channel and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. So I would just encourage your people to follow me, because I'm going to be always giving you little tips and little reminders that will hopefully help propel you forward to take brave action, or to be brave in your life.
Love it. And I love it. Hey, thank you so much, Jill. This has been fantastic. And I think the most fantastic thing is the very last thing you said is you're there to help people. You're there to make a difference with people. And I'm not hearing you talk about they can sign up for this procedure or that and so forth. Right. You're just there to help. And
that really is my mission, is I want people to realize that they have the ability to be brave. They have an ability to take control of their life. And it's scary, but when they take steps forward that way, it absolutely is a game changer in terms of their level of success. But what's most important is their happiness and well-being. At the end of life, we look back, and I want to help people avoid the pain of regret. I always wanted to, but I never did. Right? So that's my motivation. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, thanks so much. And folks, thanks for listening. I guarantee I know you enjoyed this one, and hope you'll join us again soon. This is Dr. Doug saying namaste.